Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Duke Football Coverage Podcast, brought to you as always by Bull City Coordinators. Follow us on our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. Check us out on Twitter at Duke FB Coverage. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and I think that's about enough for right now because this is a first for us current player from the Duke football program. Has taken some time out of the evening of, what is today, December 9, 2021, to come on the podcast and chat with us a little bit about what he is up to, what he's been doing, and his time at Duke. We have number 12, Gunnar Holmberg, starting quarterback for the Blue Devils. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you very much for coming on. It's great to have you here. You're the second Holmberg to come on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Hard to follow that one up. As always.
Well, tell us how are you doing now?
Doing well. Like I say, just weird times for me right now. I'm just trying to enjoy the week or two off after the season and kind of wind down a little bit and kind of let your mind kind of focus on resting and recovery a little bit and kind of look back on some things. But really, then trying to enjoy some final moments with the seniors before they go and kind of have their own lives. And if you can hang out with them the last couple of times, it's always a good time.
Is that a difficult process for you to have to say goodbye to guys that you've played with for a long time?
Yeah, I think that's probably the hardest thing to do, whether that's you yourself leaving or saying goodbye to seniors and guys that, you've shed a lot of, blood, sweat and tears with throughout the years. And, the guys that you consider your brothers and talk to about everything and guys you go to for everything and vice versa. So, yeah, I think that's always tough. But, this is a place that prepares them, I think, very well for the life they're going to have. And guys, you hope to stay in touch with.
Well, tell us a little bit about how you ended up at Duke. What brought you to Durham to be a Blue Devil?
I think it started when I was really in seventh grade, I think, or whatever year, around 2013, 2012, when Duke kind of started to pick up some steam in football. And you could say I hopped on the bandwagon, if that's appropriate. But I think that's around the same time I started to play quarterback. I grew up playing linebacker, receiver, tight end, a bunch of different positions, and in eighth grade, I started playing quarterback and saw just kind of what Coach Cutt had got going on here. And it was around the same time, Peyton Manning was learning how to throw again, really, with Coach Cutt. And then I came to like the Cutcliffe Quarterback College, they called it, and through and was able to, it was like a stay the night camp and just kind of see the facilities and talk to the coaches as a young guy. And after that camp, I really fell in love with the place, fell in love with the coaches. And after my freshman year of only playing JV, they reached out to me and invited me to their invite-only camp, and went out there and ran like a 4.5 and threw, about as good as a freshman quarterback does. That weighs about like $160, compared to, a couple like 4 stars being out there. But I was cool. And then after that, they just kind of kept on talking to me and developing a relationship with me and my mom and my sister. And I love the way they treated us. And after my sophomore season, they had felt like, they were on the right track and pulled the trigger and offered me. And at that time, I think I was talking to NC State, UNC. I knew I wanted to stay in state. So those were really the schools I had talked to, and Duke, of course. And then once they offered me, I kind of knew that was the place I wanted to be. And, tough quarterback's a lot different than other positions where most schools only take one, which I think explains why I committed so early. After my sophomore season, the summer going into my junior year, I committed just because I knew it was the place I wanted to be, a place that I would really be mad at if somebody beat me to committing there. And I wanted to go in and, knew I'd be at least have a year with Daniel too. I think was something that also kind of drew me in, and knowing he was going to be, a draft pick type quarterback. And if I could just kind of see the way he works and carries himself for a year, that would be very beneficial, I think, for my career.
Well, let's talk about getting to Durham, your how your career began and then how you got to the point that you're at. You come, I believe, in 2018. You're behind Daniel Jones and Quentin Harris. And in 2019, Quentin Harris is the starter. You play some in 2020, and then you are the starting quarterback in 2021 and played very, very well. What was that process like, going from someone behind on the depth chart to a future first round pick to then becoming a starting quarterback and a captain?
Yeah, so I think I came in the mid-year, so I graduated high school in December. I came to Duke in January. Me and Casey Holman were roommates. We both came mid-year. That spring ball was a whirlwind for me, and I think just seeing the knowledge that Daniel and Q had was a very humbling process, I would say, and just kind of the way they go about their business and, you know, their talent level. I think it's something that shell shocks a lot of freshmen coming in, just seeing, you know, how good the players already there are that you never really heard about, or you know, just, you know, college players. I mean, that's just what you're going to get. And so that was a lot. I think kind of being there when, you know, you're in the back of your mind, you're like, I should still be in high school, kind of enjoying my senior year. But, you know, I think just to, you know, gain a little confidence, get familiar with the offense and the verbiage, I think went a long way. And of course, you know, to be with Daniel and Q a little bit longer, and you know, two really mature guys within the offense, and great guys and great leaders in that locker room, I think was really cool for me. And then that freshman year, you know, being a red shirt, just being able to watch Daniel and see kind of how he talked and the way he looked at film, and the way he played the game, I think was something that stuck with me for a while. Just his toughness, and the way he would really do whatever he could for his teammates and for his team to get a win. And then to go on down there and, you know, have a 8-win season and win a bowl game, I think was sweet. And, you know, something that we knew was the standard here. You know, unfortunately, the next couple of years we didn't make that. But, you know, and then going in and feeling like I was competing pretty well with Q. I think that summer, going into my sophomore year, and then, you know, having the knee injury, it was tough. But, you know, I always call it a blessing in disguise. And, you know, I think it taught me a lot about myself, and I was able to kind of step back and learn to be a good teammate, learn to not, you know, focus on yourself so much, but, you know, kind of give some of your time to others. And, you know, even as I became, you know, the starter and became an older guy in the locker room, to be able to help out guys that are going through injury and to know kind of what that process is like, I think it goes a long way. And then kind of, yeah, going through that and being able to watch Q, once again, another guy, redshirt senior that had been in the offense for a while, and you know, see him play tough football, which is kind of the Duke quarterback brand, and something he did well. You know, I think it was good and very beneficial. And then coming back from that, and you know, the 2020 season was weird in a lot of different ways. And you know, sitting behind Chase, I think it was cool. Me and him, we developed a good relationship, I would say. That's the guy that I can text whenever, and same to him. And you know, I think something that people, you know, don't get to see behind the scenes was, you know, how well we got along. But, you know, a guy that, you know, like I said, just kind of wish it would have worked out better for him. I think he'd say the same. And yeah, I mean, that was a tough season, but at the end of the day, good to get into some games. I think whether that was a fourth quarter or whatever the circumstance was, either way, you know, experience is experience. And, you know, thankful I was able to do that even a little bit. And then to transition, you know, into being the starter, I think was a really cool spring for me, to be able to, you know, run the off-season RVAs with the receivers and be able to control that, and be in total command. So I think the off-season, you're kind of like a little head coach, whether that's the spring or the summer, and being in control of that and having a good spring ball, I think was good for me, confidence-wise, and the team in general. I think was something that was good to have, like, as compared to 2020. We missed out on that. And then to go in, you know, not really start the season off on the right foot against Charlotte, but go on a 3-game win streak after that, then hit ACC play and, you know, not really go our way. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, this was the most fun I've had in a season in a long time. I think just playing regardless of the wins, to be out there and just be able to contribute, and to have, you know, kind of the hard work you'd put in the 3 years prior was, you know, really fun to be able to kind of showcase that a little bit.
You said a couple of things I want to follow up on with you. You mentioned you and Chase Bryce were pretty close. How close and how tight has the quarterback room been during your time at Duke?
Yeah, it's always been extremely tight. I think we always made fun of Daniel and Q for being like an old married couple. And they'd kind of always bring us along. So they were always fun to hang out with, always very, inviting if they were doing something or going to lunch. They'd always invite the younger quarterbacks, and that's kind of a brand that the older guy always tried to continue. And like I said with Chase, it was always a tight room because we were really all we had because outside of football they didn't really want you hanging out too much because of COVID. So whenever you get to cherish any moment with those guys and just kind of human interaction was fun, despite the year. And then this year was really good. Gavin Spurrier is kind of like a little head coach in our quarterback room, a great dude. Me and him kind of were able to lead the culture, along with Luca and Jack Collier and Riley and Jordan Moore. I think it was a really, really, really fun group, and I felt very old in that room, being, like a 22-year-old, and the closest to me was, the guys that were just turning 21. But yeah, no, I mean, it's good to be an older guy that's been around and kind of a younger room and, kind of be able to show them the ropes and have the confidence to be able to do that. I think was a lot of fun for me this year.
Well, you mentioned Gavin Spurrier being like a little coach. He does seem to have that genetically imprinted in him. So I can understand where that comes from. But you mentioned this a couple of times, and doing these interviews that I've done, I learned a lot about what the 2020 season was like for a lot of you guys. But I think it's helpful for the fans to hear it from players. How hard were all the COVID restrictions on you guys and developing your rhythm and getting into a groove and just trying to be a team?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, missing out on spring was hard. Because especially for me coming off an injury, and that was kind of going to be the time to regain my footing. And then having that, kind of pulled out from underneath me was tough. And then being one of the last, if not the last team in the ACC to come back due to COVID was hard on us, and kind of hard on Coach Cutt trying to figure out the balance for practice and how much conditioning we had, and our strength levels we can never really quite figure out because you never really know what guys were doing at home or what equipment they had access to. Was hard to really figure out, and how hard to really push guys or to know what they're going through and not really know how you need to interact with them as opposed to a usual year. I think was hard, and getting tested every day. It's a little thing, but kind of takes a toll on you the longer you do it, and being in meetings with masks on, and then being out there in helmets hitting each other and then having to separate again. I think was hard, and being in two separate locker rooms was a big thing. And some guys that had been locker buddies were now in two separate locker rooms and almost felt like you were strangers to each other. And the only time you got to see them was on a practice field, so it almost felt like you were playing a different team at times when you're out there just kind of scrimmaging. I think was hard on a lot of guys, and I think coming back in 2021, we're all very grateful to have that down to a level.
Well, you had some great moments in the 2021 season. I was at the Kansas game. I think you had 5 total touchdowns, and you tackled that guy who had picked you off. That was a great play. Walk us through that play, and where the heck did you get that speed from?
Yeah, so that was Daryl Harding was right on that route. I'd seen off corner, and kind of our motto throughout a lot of the non-conference games when we would get off coverage was to, just throw a hitch and kind of make them come up and press us and then throw it over their heads. And they had tricked me into a cover 2 look where the corner plays the flats, sat right underneath the corner, underneath the hitch route as Daryl went up like he's supposed to do. And kind of one of those right when you let go, but you're like, shoot, like that's not right. So I had to take off, and growing up, I ran track. And like, oh God, I don't know what grade it was, but in like elementary school, I was like 10th in the nation for my grade, like the 100-meter, and ran track throughout a lot of my life. My dad was really fast. My uncles, played in the NFL really fast. I think I get a lot of my speed from them. And, my cousins run track collegiately. And that's kind of something that runs in our family. So I had to pull that out a little bit. So glad that worked out.
No, it was a great play, man. It was a great play. It was a great game, and it was fun to watch. And look, I think we all know, and you kind of hit on this earlier, the season didn't end up going the way that you wanted, but you, Mateo, the O-line, I mean, there were a lot of guys on your team, and we could keep going and name those players who kept coming out trying to make plays every week. But and I'm just talking about the offense right now, but where did the resilience come from to just put the game behind you that it just happened and come out and try again next week?
Yeah, I think that a lot of that came from just the love we had for each other. And I think this was one of the closest teams I'd been around, and guys that are just all feel like family, and that there's not, necessarily a single guy in that locker room that I feel like I couldn't go up and just have a normal conversation with, which I'm, not sure a lot of teams have had before. And there wasn't a lot of Duke teams I'd had before where it felt like that in there. So to be a captain on that team that felt that tight knit, I think was awesome. And I think it allowed us to be a team that just refused to quit on each other, and to go in and just try and be as positive as we can. Because, at the end of the day, either we're out there playing the game we love, with guys we love. And, kind of regardless of the circumstances, we were going to go out there and do what we could, for the brother next to you. I think was a good motto that we kind of ran through.
Well, you mentioned that you were a captain, and we've talked about that a little bit during this interview, but just tell us what that meant to you to be elected captain.
Yeah, I mean, it meant the world, especially, with that being a player's vote. I think meant a lot for me. Just to, especially being a quarterback, you want to be able to step into that huddle or be able to step in front of a room of guys and know they have your respect. And to have them vote like that, I think just shows that they respect you. And I think that's something that you can't ask for. You just have to work for. So, to have your work, your work ethic and kind of the way you go about your daily business looked at by guys, and have them respected and be a guy that they look up to. I think meant the world, especially based on the season I was coming off of. When you feel a little frustrated with kind of where you were, to be able to take that step within a matter of months was really awesome. I think just for me to kind of fall in love with the game again.
One thing that you brought up that I forgot to ask about earlier, but I want to ask about it now, the transition from high school to college. What was that like, and what advice or comments, if any, would you give to people who are about to make that switch now?
Yeah, I think in a short summary, just it's never going to go the way you expect it or the way you have it drawn up in your mind. There's going to be a lot of hills that kind of come out of nowhere that maybe you didn't expect to have happen to you, like say an injury, or maybe a guy on that depth chart that you didn't expect to be that good and is really good, and you end up behind him, and just try and learn as much as you can from it. But yeah, it's a lot different. I mean, it's, you can come from a team of 5 D1 guys like I did in high school and think, you kind of know what a D1 guy looks like, and then get in here and your whole team is those guys, and it's a little different. And you're competing with them while also, trying to make relationships with them. And, it's going to be guys that, are best friends for the rest of your life, which is something that's really cool about college football, and just all the different backgrounds guys come from. But, and then nobody was really brought up the same way, but you all kind of bond together and through a work ethic, I think is the magical part of college football and in the locker room. But yeah, no, I think for me, it took a little bit longer than I think I expected, coming into play, and also just gaining my confidence back, from being a starter in high school to becoming a starter in college. I think it takes a lot of learning of a playbook, and a lot of learning, I think, of yourself, and just kind of the way you want to carry yourself, and kind of the work ethic you have to install compared to what you had in high school, I think is a lot different.
You mentioned that, and I've had a couple of people comment on this, but what's the difference between the playbook in high school and the playbook in college?
Yeah, so I think it's not necessarily a lot more verbiage, at least with us, it wasn't. But I think it's just knowing that, if somebody's lined up wrong, it's on you, as the quarterback, and having to know, 15 different formations and knowing where everybody lines up. And if they're wrong, you're wrong. If a blocking scheme is done the wrong way, or, having to protect yourself in the passing game is up to the quarterback here. And that's something I never really did until I got here. So that was a lot different, and just the different ways you can run the ball are a lot different, and more ways than you could ever imagine, really. And then just passing concepts and learning what you like against certain defenses is something that's a lot different. And RPOs are something I didn't really do a whole bunch of in high school, but something that we did a good amount of this year, I would say, and something that I think took a little bit to get used to. but is a big part of college football now. So that's something that's a lot of fun to do.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your academics. And I think you have 2 years of eligibility left. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you got the super season, as they call it, as a result of 2020.
Yeah.
That's kind of putting a nice spin on something that was terrible for everybody.
Yeah, you get a little bit of a positive out of it.
Right. You got to find the joys and the little things, I guess. I don't know, but you've already graduated. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
How do you think that Duke degree, that Duke brand behind your name will help you going forward in life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the reasons a lot of guys, come here, and, it kind of as almost a plan B. If football doesn't work out, you always have that degree that I think speaks on, a lot of levels of just kind of the person you are, for being able to balance that out with football and being a student athlete. But just, I think a lot of it is the connections you have. There's a lot of very important people that have went to Duke and that are, excited to reach out, and, carry on the Duke brand, whether you're looking for a job or to kind of set you up with another job. I think networking is the biggest part that I've taken away from it. And, I think something too, just coming along with the degree and being at Duke is meeting a lot of people that aren't athletes that, have become my best friends. And I think that's been something that was really unexpected for me, but something that's been really cool. And just hearing their backgrounds and kind of how they were brought up. You always think about Duke, being really rich kids, and having, really easy upbringings. And then there's also a couple that, didn't have a very easy upbringing and are here because they worked their butt off. I think is something that's been really cool for me to see. And people that are, once again, networking and really, really smart kids, I think is without a question kind of what you get here. But yeah, no, that's, I think, been something really cool to come along with the degree, is just kind of the relationships outside of sports.
Tell us a little bit about, and I think this is something that a lot of people may not realize, is how small of a student body Duke has. Tell us what that's like as far as adjusting to that, living on kind of a smaller campus. I mean, I grew up in a really small town. I went to a small law school, so I felt at home, but I imagine for some people it wouldn't be easy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it takes a little bit. I think for such a small population, it almost feels like a big campus, with East and West Campus being two different things, and being kind of spread out about the campus. But yeah, I mean, I think it's something that's, I think, takes a little bit to get used to, but it's really cool. I think once you kind of find your friends, and you can really go wherever and you'll see somebody, and not feel like a stranger kind of wherever you are, feel out of place. I think is a good part about being at, a smaller school. You can walk into, West Union, that really, beautiful dining center they have here, and always see somebody sitting down that, and can go up and talk to, and, have a lot of similar classes with the same people kind of over and over again sometimes, depending on your major. It's something that's cool and a good way to build relationships. So yeah, no, I think that's been a lot of fun, and kind of the positive of being at a smaller school.
So for all those who have not committed yet, great community. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And email me and you can break your commitment live.
On Zoom.
What about you? You've been at Duke since 2018. Just tell us what you've enjoyed the most about your time at Duke. It's something I ask everybody, either on the field, off the field, anything. I mean, what when you look back on your time at Duke, what are you going to think about?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of like I mentioned on earlier, just really a lot of it's the relationships I got here. That I think my freshman year I had a tough time really, finding, my really close friend group. And we kind of just bounce around, and just trying to feel out, different people. But, I think my sophomore year, kind of once again, a blessing with the injury, I was able to really find my close friends and people that, truly cared about me, and being able to hang out with them. And, a couple of them are my roommates now. And I think that's been something that's really special, and, relationships that I'll have for the rest of my life, with these guys, and something that, I don't think I expected after my freshman year. I wasn't truly in love with the place, I think, because of that. And then, meeting the people that, you find to love, I think allows this place to be a lot more enjoyable for you. I think it's something that as I walk away from Duke, I'll always remember about this place.
Well, let's switch gears from that to something that's new or new-ish, the NIL laws that have come into effect. Could you comment on that a little bit? I know some of your teammates have benefited from that, and I've spoken with Ryan Wolitzer, Wolitzer Group, great guy. Just tell us from your perspective how it's helped, if at all, the student athletes and what we as fans should know about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's helped in a lot of ways. And like you said, Wolitzer, a former teammate of mine, and now, represents me, has been a great guy, and has been very, unselfish throughout this whole deal. And somebody that, I think as long as you pick the right guy, kind of like a guy like that, and, make sure everything's safe for you, and make sure you don't do anything to, put your eligibility at stake. It turns out to be a great thing. And, if you're hunting for cash, I think there's ways you can do it, but I think it all leads back to, you got to perform on the field, and you got to, go out there and kind of do what you do and try to win as many games as possible, because that of course brings, publicity to it. And then, I think once again, the more human-like student athletes can feel, the better, and, can feel like a normal student and have the same, options that a normal student has, whether they have those options because they have a lot of Instagram followers per se. But, like I said, I mean, yeah, whatever you can do to kind of get your name out, and create opportunities for yourself. I think is a really cool deal, and allows athletes to kind of feel, sometimes feel like they're being used. I think people have seen that on Twitter, and feel like they're kind of just kind of at the mercy of the NCAA. But now they kind of have a little bit of freedom. I think has allowed a lot of guys to feel cool, and whether that's making merchandise for their family to buy and wear the games, and get a little benefit from, is just been a really cool deal for a lot of teammates.
One thing I want to ask you too, because you're a current player, and I've asked a lot of former players this, but I'd like to get your perspective on this question and this topic, which is, for me, doing this has helped me become a better fan. It's helped me, I think, support the team more and the players more. But what would you say to the fans who listen to this about what we should know or do differently to be better fans and more supportive of guys like you and your teammates throughout a season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is, I think playing at Wallace Wade, a beautiful stadium, a really cool place to be. I think the first thing is just show up, show guys you support them. I think that goes a long way for team morale, whenever you're out there and kind of feel like you're playing for a crowd, kind of in the ACC, whether you're playing another ACC opponent, kind of hearing a little crowd noise, especially when you're at home, is always fun for people. And, like I said, I'm not really a huge guy that likes to, look around on social media. But yeah, that's kind of another piece of advice I give to guys that are playing college football, is don't really look at that, because, that's kind of the world we live in now, and, so be it. People are going to say what they say. But, I think just understand the work ethic guys put in, and they're devoting their lives to Duke football right now. And that's the most important thing to them, and wins and losses affect them much more. So that's really their life right now. And if we lose a game, it's going to affect them for probably the next 2 days. And then they have to find a way to cut it off and move on, which isn't easy and isn't very natural, I think, for people. But, guys do their best. There isn't a single game where guys go out there and trying to make a mistake and trying to lose. They go out there, and know that they've put in hours and hours throughout the week to go out there and, really put their best foot forward on Saturdays. And if that doesn't happen, all they can do is hope they do it the next week. So, just understand that they're humans too. I think at the end of the day is something that I think kind of gets departed from student athletes.
Well, and a lot of you guys, certainly towards the end of the season, if not the middle part of the season, are playing through some injuries, right?
Yeah.
And that's not something that we know about because of the way injury reports are done. It's not like in the NFL. Is that something that you think we ought to keep in mind as well, that there's a good shot you guys are not 100% like you were before game one of the season?
Yeah, I think that's something that happens yearly. And like I said, I think you try to keep it under wraps, you know, kind of as much as possible and as much as it's healthy for that player. Because, you know, if a team sees you have a hurt right ankle, you know, they might try and, you know, wrap you up there or something different. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of things, especially throughout the middle of the season, that kind of hit you, and you know, you may not feel it till after the game, or you might feel it right in that moment. But yeah, no, I think, you know, towards the end of the season, towards the middle of the season, you know, injuries are going to happen. These are big dudes hitting each other, and you know, I think it's just kind of natural, you know, especially through a 12-game season in the ACC. You know, it's you feel every hit. You know, I didn't really realize that until now, but those hits, you do feel them. And you know, it's very, very natural to get injured kind of here and there, whether you can, you know, play through it or not. But if you play through it, you know, I think that's you know, you know, a big sign of toughness. You know, if it doesn't have really a risk of getting worse. And you know, but at the end of the day, it might still be in the back of your head, and you might not have your best game because of that. And I think, yeah, that is something that's very real, and you know, fans should kind of know about.
Well, one thing that I would like to say is one message that I try to convey on the Twitter account and certainly on here is, you know, we don't criticize players. It's just not what we do. Now, I mean, we may say things like maybe move some people around or something like that, but we're not going to criticize players. It's just not what we do. And I think that, I mean, you guys aren't professionals. You put in a lot of time and all that, but you're still not professionals. So just fans who are out there listening to that, keep that in mind. One thing though that I do want to impart to you is you mentioned the short. Well, you didn't say this, but you were getting at a short memory, a short attention span, get the loss out of your system.
Yeah.
As a trial attorney, let me tell you, the sooner you can move past that case you lost. You know, I had a premises liability case, which Virginia, I tell people all the time, it'd be great if we just had law from the 1900s. We're still kind of in the 1800s in many respects. Okay. Yeah. And Virginia premises liability cases are terrible. And there's the first time I ever had a case get struck by the court. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I've been doing this for, you know, well over a decade. It was the first time I'd ever had a case struck. And then I went down to the Virginia Tech game for you guys with a buddy of mine who's a Tech fan. And I mentioned that to him. And he said, "What are you whining about? I get premises cases struck all the time."
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but, you know, and I've lost a lot of trials because of the type of work that I do. We've lost a lot of trials, and you just have to learn to get over them. So that skill that you learn, that habit that you learn, will have tremendous benefits in your professional life.
Yeah, I could see that goes a long way.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to say about your time at Duke, about what you're up to now, what you're doing? I mean, open mic, say whatever you want.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think once again, no secret, I'm now in the portal. You know, I think it's been a cool time for Duke. You know, I think, you know, a lot of respect to Coach Cut. You know, that's my guy. You know, been talking to him since I was a freshman in high school. Have a lot of respect for him and what he did for this program, and was able to grow up and watch the change he brought here. And you know, he wishes us all nothing but the best. And you know, he reaches out to a lot of players now, and you know, talks to them. You know, says now I'm your biggest fan. So a guy that, you know, will always have a special place in my heart. And you know, taught me a lot about the game of football and the position of quarterback. And yeah, like I said, I think had a lot of fun learning from him. Once again, I'm now in a portal, which is kind of like being a high school recruit all over again, but trying to condense it all in a month, which, you know, isn't the easiest thing in the world. But, you know, it's a lot of fun in a way. Kind of exciting to see if there's something new for you. You know, coming back to Duke isn't totally out of the option. I think it's something that's been good for me. You know, as long as you know, the next guy here is cool with it. I think it's something that's, you know, kind of in the back of my mind still. But yeah, like I said, I think just trying to go through that now and trying to leave myself up with as many decisions as possible to try and, you know, better my football career, and try and make that as long as possible. So yeah, no, I think that's been a lot of fun. And I think no matter what happens, I think Duke's going to be in a good place football wise. I think Nina King is doing a great job, and is going to, you know, give Duke football really what they need to really kind of get back on stride.
So if you do decide to come back, I take from what you just said is that you're going to come on here and we'll do an announcement on here.
Yeah.
We'll make it official on here. No comment on that. Just I'm assuming
Yeah.
that's true. So that's the way I'm going to interpret that. All right.
Yeah, that works. You're
Well,
there.
Gunnar, I just want to say thanks a lot, not only for coming on here, but I've really enjoyed watching you as a quarterback and your time at Duke. This was the first time I think I'd ever gone to more than, I know I went to 3 games this year, which normally I just go to 1 because I live in Virginia and it's hard to get down there and I got
Yeah,
kids.
I believe it. Yeah.
I got a busy practice, but
Yeah.
I really enjoyed watching you play. I've really enjoyed watching you in your time at Duke. I mean, you guys like Jake, Mateo, Dwayne Carter, Ben Fry. I mean, they're just a lot of hard-nosed guys, and it's just been a heck of a lot of fun watching you play. And wherever you end up, man, I just want to say that we are all big fans of yours, and we want nothing but the best for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is, I think, episode 3 of season 2. We're churning them out at a pretty good clip. We have some other interviews lined up. I'm going to do a little bit of a teaser. We have 2 wide receivers who have agreed to come on. One very, very current. One who was back a little bit before this most recent era. We also have a commitment from a quarterback who was on the 1989 team and threw for close to 500 yards, I believe, if memory serves correct, against North Carolina. I'll let you draw your conclusions from that. Those of you older fans who are out there may know who I'm referring to. So we have some more, and we also have a defensive player committed in February to do an interview who was very, very good and is now playing in Canada. So I'll let you do some research on that. But again, go to our website, bullcitycoordinators.com, at Duke FB coverage. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple if you wouldn't mind. And hey, we activated listener support. If you want, donate. If you don't want to donate, that's fine. But if you do, let me know that you have done that, and we'll find a way to give you a shout out here on the podcast. And until the next interview, go Duke.